watching The Conversation here on Lagos Television, and before we went on that break, we did tell you that our focus today will be on early childhood education. What are the latest techniques or evolving techniques that are needed to ensure that, of course, the education of children shaped in the right direction. And when you talk about early childhood education, I think a lot of people actually get it wrong and they're not sure what exactly this entails. On the program today, we intend to put things in the right perspective and say how we all can be better for it in our society. And we do have joining us today a professor of English at the Lagos State University. Lasso is also an educational development strategist. Join us this morning as we welcome Professor Adeleke Fakoya. Thank you for being here on the program.
Thanks a lot.
Right. I'm going to call him Lefak a lot on the program because that's what we actually call him.
Actually.
Yeah, so let's start this way. A lot of people, when you say early childhood, it is actually a course of study. So many people actually study early childhood education because they want to be authorities in that particular form of education. But when you say early childhood education, what exactly are we talking about?
Well, thanks. Early childhood, how early, that's the first thing. And then childhood, what kind of childhood are we talking about? Okay. So you look at the thing, as you said, a lot of professionals have discussed it.
Okay.
But then some schools still get it wrong because a number of things are missed from time to time. We miss the point. Early childhood does not mean that the child has to go to school formally,
okay,
as in a formal way. It is not necessary. The Montessori approach to education, for instance, is a good testimony for early childhood.
Okay.
You don't want your child to just stay at home, so you send him or her to school to learn a couple of things. Now, these things can be through so many ways, especially considering the age of the child.
Right.
Right? And so if you plot a graph, for instance, you'll find that a child has to do things that are age appropriate. In other words, every activity that child has to be involved in must be according to
their age.
So if you have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old going to school, as the Yorubas say, Jeki Lesimi, it is not as if he's going there to pass exams or to learn anything in the rigorous formal manner that teachers want to impose on students or on pupils. So what we have is the child just goes there and then just not to waste time, to spend time with other people's children. And everything they seem to learn in quotes now, should just be in terms of how they play. So everything will be unstructured. It is not like there's a timetable, which could be for higher level education. So early childhood education is just simply a dynamic process through which a child's development is organized.
Right. I like how you put it that, you know, when a child goes to school, especially from age 2, it is not really to read to pass examinations. It is also to develop their skills, mainly in a playful manner. And so when you have the Montessori kind of education where it is more about singing, jumping, playing, and then sleeping, because oftentimes you find that half of the time they don't have
That's
a
why
problem.
I said age appropriate. It's not every child who goes to school goes there to sleep.
Right.
2, 3, 4. When we went to school, we had to stay home till we were 6 years old.
And because you had to use your
hand.
hand.
Your right hand must touch your left ear.
Right.
Okay. But these days, you have parents sending their children from kindergarten to nursery and so on. Okay. That's early childhood.
Right.
But the contents of the interaction between the teacher and the pupil is what exactly is early childhood education.
Okay. So, the fact, before we put the, well, not blame now, before we apportion responsibilities, let's start from the home. How important is it for parents to really understand what early childhood education really is? Because it looks like sometimes the pressure comes from the parents themselves rather than the schools, when you've said now that age-appropriate, not only chores, but age-appropriate learning and teaching is also very important. And so for a child of 2 3, when you take them to school, how important is it to also, as a parent, ensure that they are starting right? So at 2, it is expected that maybe you start from a creche, play group at 2. And so if you now go there and they say we don't have play group, just give me any class that is available. So, because I want to Jekile Simi in code. So let's start from the parents. How important is it for parents to understand what this is all about?
A lot of parents are actually illiterate when it comes to education, even in spite of the fact that they could be professors. Being illiterate doesn't mean that I can't read or write and so on. It's just being uninformed about certain things, especially about your child's education. A child that goes to school school, let's put it in quotes or in italics, is not school as we know it. Okay, so goes to school at 2 or 3 or 4. There's no program other than maybe a play-based learning system.
Right.
In which case, everything he or she does, that the child does, will be extremely outdoor, to go and play. And then when you come back indoors, what you do there is things that are just like playing again, singing rhymes and so on. Watching Barney. All right, when we were growing up, we watched Sesame Street. Today, there are so many learning programs that any child should be exposed to. Those learning programs are actually in themselves an education.
Right.
You could just think that your child is just going there to clap and so on, but by clapping, the child is learning rhythm. Rhythm, music. Sound, yes. So a child who's clapping misses the beat, for instance, you could know that that child probably has a hearing problem. All right? Or some other neurological issue.
Right.
So all these things are systematically arranged to ensure that the child is, at this age, learning this. And then from there, maybe it's going to be inquiry-based learning, which is still principally outdoor. And then you could take them on maybe tours, like you go to the zoo, go and see birds anywhere and so on. And then you come back to class in quotes again. And ask them,
what did
you hear what the lion, when the lion roared? Okay, so if the lion came in here now, what would you do? So you cause them to develop critical thinking skills.
Right.
So it is not as if they're going to write anything, but most of the things they'll be doing at that time is just to let you know, the teacher know that they saw, they heard, and they can internalize these things, process them. So, but parents, I'm sorry, ma.
Let's go ahead.
Parents miss the point when they think that their child ought to be able to sing the national anthem, for instance. At age 3, at age 4. Teachers miss the point when they think that the child must be a dullard or must have autism, maybe because the child can't tell 5 times 7 at age 4. At age 4. So it's rather a phenomenon of what I would call killer teachers, teachers who kill potential, killers who predispose the child to conditions that are unsuitable, even for learning.
I'll still come back to parents and how discerning parents should be, because you've mentioned the fact that parents, most parents are illiterate, and by being illiterate doesn't mean they're not lettered. But, you know, they just can't at that point in time decipher what they should do. And I'm just going to use that video which went viral as an example here and bring that up here of that teacher who, of course, you know, beat this boy, a 3-year-old, because he could not write the number 6. So if you look at that particular incident, what happened?
Well, you've raised 2 or 3 issues. First, the parents again. A number of parents want their children to leave school early, so they skip
primary 6 or 5.
Education is a process, and most likely a linear process with so many dots to connect. By the moment you make a child skip a particular dot, you come back and pay for it. A child who was born preterm, let's say by 7 months, would need 2 months, for instance, maybe in the incubator, to develop the things that he or she ought to have developed in the womb. It's the same thing. A child who skips like primary 4 or primary 5 and goes on to secondary school will pay for it later. A child who takes JAMB in class 4, and because he or she scores 200, 280 or 300, you think, oh, must be a brilliant child and so on. there's no problem. So he graduates from the university at the age of, let's say, 17 or 18. And so the parents are happy. My child has just graduated at 18. He will take a master's by 20, by 25, he has a PhD. So what? So
Why
what?
the hurry?
Why the hurry? So the parents ought to be re-educated or reoriented as regards when a child ought to leave school and why a child ought to complete a process. Now, for the teachers, a teacher who deliberately loads pupils with classwork, school homework, all kinds of work, does not know what education is. There are many things you can only do in class.
Okay.
Many things you should do at home. And where the parents come in, there is need for parental involvement, such that those killer teachers will not have the upper hand. Now, with the child you're talking about, the 3-year-old whom the teacher kept slapping and so on, you know, the teacher actually was totally uninformed about education. A child is standing here,
And then you
are
on
there,
the other side.
or a child is there and you are here. And you're asking the child to write 6. From your own end here,
And
it is
private-
6.
Yeah, and then from his
From
end
that
is
child's
9.
end, it is 9.
Right.
Are we okay? If you put Q here, the small letter Q, and the child has to write it, you'll be writing something different.
Right,
D,
because you're not on the same side.
not at all. D becomes B, and so on. So that child is being disoriented.
Right.
Eventually, the teacher may now see where this child has autism because he's not getting it right. In actual fact, the teacher is going to engender something in that child, something like dyslexia, because the child will not be able to write appropriately. So if you write 61 here, the child is going
It's
to give you
16.
19. Sorry,
Oh,
19,
yeah,
not 16.
19, true, 19.
19. Because it's going to be like learning through the
other
mirror.
side, yeah.
Flip. So all those things are the things that the teacher ought to have known. And then what teaching style are you using that necessitates slapping a child the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, and punching him, for instance, in the chest? So what learning or teaching style are you, okay? So gone are the days when if you scored 0, teachers will call you out to shame you, all right? They will call like 4 of you to a side, and then everybody else will now be singing for you. And then you'll be responding, our real, right? Where are the dollars? Where are the dollars in this class? Oh, here we are. Right? Gone are those days, because the teacher's effort ought to be geared towards improving that child's cognitive skills,
Right.
rather than condemning everything the child does.
Right.
So, you know, when you say autism, for instance, it's a spectrum.
It is.
And there are levels of autism. So that teacher is likely to say this child is autistic simply because...
He has not
But
gotten.
then, what teaching style are you
Are you also
enforcing
using?
by beating that child the first time they say, or within like a minute? And so-
Right. So, what role does school owners play here? Because if another teacher was, we're meant to understand that another teacher actually recorded that episode. Even though I have a problem with the teacher who recorded, because my thoughts are, to what extent would you allow a child being abused and all you wanted was documentation? Why didn't you intervene? 1. Then 2, if that video had also not been recorded, and I mean all of the things you've identified could happen to that child, what role should school owners play here in ensuring that their teachers are actually not killer teachers, but are teachers who are helping children to identify their skills and not killing those skills that they have?
Thanks. The primary thing here is for school owners to know that they have the institutional responsibility to ensure that every child, okay, is individually taken care of. All right? It's not as if you're going to carry this one and dandle him or her and so on. No. You have to ensure that every child's learning style is properly taken care of. There are so many children who need to feel something to know, oh, this is silk, not khaki. This is rayon, not wool, and so on. They have to feel it. There are children who have to hear that sound to be sure that the difference between a flute, for instance, and a saxophone, all right, they need to hear it.
Yeah.
So there are children who need to see things, to see that thing. If you say, for instance, a lion is, okay, a lion is X, but the child needs to see the lion to know, okay? So these are things that every teacher ought to know first and foremost about each child.
Okay.
Number two, every proprietor, as you said, ought to know that the buck stops on their desk.
Sure.
Okay? So if any teacher kills a child, is coming to that school. That's why schools are shut down. If you know how many schools have been, have gone through that kind of thing here in Lagos. So for this school, they have to know, for instance, that there's a need for us to borrow a leaf from the ecology of technology into which we operate these days. What stops every school from having CCTV cameras in their classes?
Right.
All right? Would they have waited for that child to be killed
Before
taking action? Okay? So if you have CCTV cameras, or if you have teachers who are just there, like you, like everybody else, observing and reporting objectively, this is what happens in this person's class every day. Because the child whom we're talking about, I don't think it was the first time he or she was experiencing that thing. I don't think so. He must have been used to that teacher slapping, all right, knocking them on the head and so on. So every proprietor ought to know that it's your responsibility to ensure that things go right.
So again, you've just said perhaps that was not the first time that child was experiencing such, an abuse. So again, going back to parents, and children are also very vocal. Sometimes a lot of them will tell you this is happening, or they will paint a picture of something close to that if they were scared of not, saying what has actually happened. So how important should parents also listen to their children?
Education, as I know it, is too important for any proprietor or any government to leave it to infanticidal teachers, teachers who kill the child, infanticidal teachers. That's one. Number two, if a child goes to school and refuses to talk at home about what happened in school, you may discover that that child is already going through a neurological issue, maybe selective mutism. He's not mute, right? But the child selects when to talk, when to speak, when not to talk. So if the teacher tells you in school, if you tell your mom or dad, I will kill you tomorrow, okay? That child obviously is going to develop selective mutism. At home, he will be very open, he'll be playing. In school, he'll be so responsible that he may not even want to talk at all. Okay. So these things do happen, and every good teacher should go through, every teacher should go through a training
I like
program.
how you recounted every teacher, so every teacher. Not a good teacher here.
Even university teachers, because you have a PhD doesn't make you a teacher. No, it just makes you a knowledgeable person in one area of study. Okay. So you still need to be taught, maybe by your colleagues, okay, what it is to teach. A teacher is set to make things clear. Right. But all the same, we can't leave everything to the teacher. There should be a supervisor. So those supervisors could be maybe government, maybe the proprietor, maybe the dean of the faculty, maybe the head of the department, maybe the vice chancellor, to ensure that these teachers are doing the appropriate things and so on. They don't just go there and then read notes and so on. No, you have to talk to people the way they should be talked to. Right. So at the lower level at which we're talking here, every child must be made special. Okay. Special means what the parents can't do at home, you should be able to do. Okay. The average child sees most teachers as a model. And if your parents, if a teacher fails to meet that criterion of becoming a child's model, he has failed as a teacher. Many parents do not even know how to parent, how to train their children. They will push it to the teacher. Right. So the teacher now becomes like the repository of knowledge, of kindness, of attention, of care that the child needs. Okay.
All right. I think Adebimpe has a question to take, and then we'll continue from there. Adebimpe.
Yes, find out that before a person or a teacher gets employed, are there criteria, schools should, look out for? And again, even after they are being employed, do they not train these teachers? You know, I just want to know, I'm not a teacher, what criteria should be looked out for before you employ a person as a teacher,
Thanks, ma'am.
especially for early childhood education?
You know, education is a continuum. So everyone who is called a teacher, whether it's at the lower level or the secondary level or the tertiary level, ought to undergo a kind of training program that will tell us, the employers, is this person quite knowledgeable about what he or she wants to teach? So it's called pedagogic content knowledge, PCK. Pedagogic, you have to know what you are going to teach, okay? Content, the thing,
What exactly?
the details of that knowledge. So if a teacher lacks pedagogic content knowledge, of course, it's unsuitable. You may be qualified by virtue of the degrees you carry, but you become ineligible because of the deficiencies we're looking at here. Content knowledge. Now, let's take that down a bit to primary school, where all learning begins, and where a child's future may be destroyed forever, becoming a dropout because of maybe unresponsive teachers. Irresponsible proprietors, and so on. Okay, so at that point, it may be possible, in addition to the interview regarding content knowledge, certification, and so on, to go for maybe a psychiatric evaluation. Every teacher needs to be cleared that this person knows what is what. A teacher, for instance, that thinks that, after all, they're not children. You know, there are builders, people who build houses, and you ask them, you ought to have like 5 pillars here. Say, well, 3 pillars are okay. After all, I'm going to rent it out. I'm going to live inside. There are such teachers, and those are the ones we are calling infanticidal here. They're the ones that kill potential. They kill the child's growth, the development, everything. They kill everything. And so you'd not be surprised if such a child becomes uninterested in education.
Okay.
So basically what we're looking at here is every teacher ought to go through a training process, a continuous, it's not just one
Just
time.
off
and on.
It has to be
Okay.
continuous.
It has to be continuous. Every day, you will come and then we'll test. We'll test. The thing about us here is we just think that once you know the proprietor,
You can get a job.
Exactly.
just go in there and teach. Once you know the governor, go and become a lecturer. Once you know the minister for education, you can be appointed as professor even if you don't have the certificate. So we're looking at here the need for them to have certification, number 1, content knowledge, number 2, but above all, psychiatric evaluation, that this person will not do damage to a child's life.
Yeah, that's very
Okay, Joy?
true.
Yeah.
Very important.
So I want to know, as a parent, how can you help a child who has dyslexia? Or sometimes my son would write the 6 the other way around. Does it mean that he has it? Or it's just his age? So how do you help that kind of child?
There are many learning difficulties or learning problems or learning disorders. I hate to call it anything else. But these things may not necessarily be neurological. You know, a child goes to school with maybe he's a southpaw, he uses the left hand to teach. And then here is a superstitious teacher thinking that, no,
You
you
can't
should
use
write the
left
right.
or...
Once you do that, you are tinkering with the brain.
Right.
It's not obvious all the time, but you are tinkering with the brain. Persistent tinkering, all right, causes this kind of thing. But I'm not diagnosing here, all right? So you may need to see a therapist who is qualified in neurological disorders, especially learning disorders. See somebody who is versed in that kind of area and then see what they will tell you. I cannot diagnose here.
And perhaps the boy is just he's just too small to...
Yeah, maybe it's not time for him.
Yeah,
to,
so...
I
to do
remember
it.
when my kids were writing, you know, like that, and I went to school and said, no, they're called mirror images, you know, that after some time they'll
will
start.
correct
Yeah, it will.
itself.
It will
You
correct
have a lot of
itself.
teachers who have the same problem. You know, 8 is usually from right and then back to right. A lot of teachers do it left, back to left. Even when they write O or 0, they do it this
Like
way.
that, yeah.
I don't know what's responsible for it, but if you search very well, a therapist may be able to offer you advice and how to deal with it. The things to look out for actually will be, does my child's reasoning right, fit within the age of, you know, this kind of thing he's talking about or she's talking about? If you know that your child doesn't have sufficient critical reasoning skills, you may see an expert again, but it is not me. I've not been called here to discuss neurological issues, even though, to tell the truth, I can. There are some language-based disorders that maybe they have an indication in something not properly right up there. But I'm not a trained person in that area. So you may need to see a qualified
If it persists.
person. Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, Prof, let's look at individualized learning approaches. You've also talked about that, and so it's very important that you also treat every child. You said it earlier,
Yes.
in a special way,
Yes.
and then do not generalize.
Yes.
Because again, yes, you might have a lot of children in your class as a teacher, but sometimes it's okay to also pay attention to them individually so you know their strengths
Yes.
and their weaknesses. How important is this in early childhood education?
It's the absolute thing. Every child comes with, you know, a child is a tabula rasa. A child comes with a clean slate, nothing. So the child's life begins with what the teacher writes on it. And that's why you cannot leave any child. That's why you cannot judge any child a priori. You cannot say, oh, he's just, he's a dullard. Look, what tests did you, what specialist tests
Did you carry
conduct
on that child?
to
and then
confirm that this
he's
is
a
a dullard and so on, you know? So every child deserves attention, all right? Now, the problem becomes complicated when you have classrooms that are filled with too many students,
Right.
all right? It is not possible for me, for instance, if I'm teaching a class of
50.
50 primary school, all right? Usually, children are garrulous, noisy, and so on. They want to touch somebody's pencil. Their attention span is, you know, is too limited. But an impatient teacher will tell you that this child has ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Meanwhile, there's nothing wrong with the child. The child is just being a child.
Yeah.
So you have to be sure that the case is as you stated because of your knowledge, your qualification, and then you have to consult too.
Right.
You know, we live in an era of technology. There's everything we need available if it's information on the internet. Search, how can I teach pre-age school more creatively? There will be something there for you.
Right.
And then all you need to do is just, okay, on the basis of my own qualification and exposure, I can adopt this kind of style.
Okay.
So every child that you meet, as I said earlier, has a particular learning style. And so no one size will fit everybody. No, your teaching style will be varied. The way you will teach the same number of children in the same class, the way you will teach them mathematics, cannot be the same way as you will teach English or teach biology.
Right.
Some of them need to be told or to be shown some things.
Before they
need to
can
feel it.
grasp it, okay.
Yes. So a visual learner, for instance, needs to see what you're talking about. You can't discuss colors if I don't see it.
True.
Red, blue, and so on.
How
So
would you visualize if you don't see it?
that's it.
So it has to be there.
So then you have the kinesthetic learners. They have to touch. They feel it. They feel it. So, and then there's the auditory learners. They have to hear that thing. You can't teach sound if it's imperceptible. We have to say, that's a third, that's a clap, and so on. So they have to hear it. And so some children will get it even without being shown, without being told, and so on. But there are so many others who will not until you've done the appropriate thing to create a connection between their expectation and your own projection.
So if you take a look at our system in Nigeria, Lagos in particular, and the number of schools that we have, and the number of unqualified teachers in some of these nursery schools, what would you suggest in terms of what should government, you know, look out for when it comes to how important early childhood education is, and the fact that some of those people are there to fill a gap because they do not have a job, they're not qualified teachers, and so they're just there frustrated, angry, and then bringing all of those on those children. So are there policies that you'd like to be rejigged, or are there things that you'd like for government to also be more particular about when it comes to teaching and learning of our children at the preschool age?
First things first, it's not all about qualification.
Okay.
It's about suitability. This person has this degree, yes. Is the person suitable? Okay. And suitability is largely a matter of emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. If a person is not empathetic, that person can never be a teacher. Mm-hmm. You can't be a teacher. If a person is too judgmental, you can't be a teacher. Okay. A teacher at the level we're looking at, early childhood and so on, the teacher has to be a parent. Not that you should have got married or no.
Yeah, but you should be.
The inclination that parents have should be your ideal disposition at any time. So what government can do is, one, reduce the number of students in their classes. That's when the teacher will have a clear mind, okay, an objective mind, a peaceful mind to teach. A teacher who has too many students, especially too many rebellious, in quotes now. Yeah, children are rebellious naturally. True. They're adventurous, okay? They don't like to be put together and then to be commanded and so. If you allow children to play, you will see that there's a lot even you can learn. You can learn how they collaborate, for instance.
Yes.
Why would a boy not be found among boys? Why would he be found among girls? Yes, that's where it starts. When a lady says, I have more friends among boys than among... Yes. It's learning. There are some things that these people do which make me feel good. So every teacher must also go through that kind of learning process. 2, our government needs to change the policy. Put people who know about education in education. Education is not just like...
It's not business.
You will not put a pastor in charge of law, for instance. Let's say you're looking for Chief Justice of the Federation. Right. You will not put a pastor, somebody
who doesn't have a, who is not a lawyer.
You will not put Professor Fakoya as the Accountant General of Lagos State.
Because that's not I
don't know anything beyond ledger, credit and debit in my account.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to put appropriate people in those positions. Right. Lastly, every teacher must first know that he has to come to the level of the students. Whether you are teaching in the university or anywhere else, where do your students congregate, for instance? They're always online. Okay, good. So make your teaching hybrid. Teach them in class, and then meet them where they congregate. Okay. Use examples from where they congregate to do the things in class. Okay. That's it.
Right. Prof, before we allow you to go, I'm just going to ask if, I mean, you operate within a university, and you would have come across a whole lot of students. Are there students that you've seen that, you know, just interacting with them, you just knew that there was something wrong with the foundation?
That would be a very subjective thing. But because my evaluation will be without having carried out any particular test. But there are a lot of students who come to school damaged. Damaged. That's the truth. The word is damaged. Damage can arise from, for instance, maybe the dysfunction, a dysfunctional marriage. Okay. Father and mother don't see eye to eye. Okay. They're not together, and so the child has the opportunity to lie. When he's with the boyfriend, he will tell the dad, I was with my mom. He will tell the mom, I was with daddy, knowing that the two of them will never ask each other. So when such a child comes to school, the first thing he or she does is to look for friends who have similar orientations, so to speak. And from there, the damage gets compounded. Okay. Now, if the child does not watch out, he or she may start taking drugs. That's a prevalent thing today. Nobody can say there are no drug addicts, and there are so many of them. In actual fact, the general practice today is for them to smoke weed. Colorado, all those things that you hear, okay, they're not fiction. They're real. They're real things in some people's lives. And the thing is, over-dependence on all these things, okay, they have
psychotic behaviors.
Yes. So that psychosis could be helped if they seek help.
Right.
But they won't seek help until society now takes them and puts them where they should go. So we have such students. But then again, even in the midst of these terrible lot, we have outstanding students. Many of them are actually in government today. And I mean, I'm very happy I come from LASU, okay? And I can say that I can point to people in power in Lagos State, okay, who happen to be former students of LASU. Yeah, so we can say that students are not good at this and so on, but then from this not good, and so we still have exceedingly brilliant ones.
Right.
Yes.
All right, we'd have to leave this conversation here this morning, except if there's anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to put out there. Any other thing?
Well, our teachers at any level at all need to take advantage of technology.
Okay.
I wouldn't like to, if I was still a student, for instance, I wouldn't like to be taught the way my teachers or my parents were taught 100 years ago, and that's what the majority of teachers are doing today.
Right. So there's
when
a need
they
to
see
skill upgrade.
you have to scale up, yes.
Okay.
When they see students who want to outshine them, yes, they want to attack those students.
Right.
You ask intelligent questions, and the teacher will now say you, oh, so you want to prove that you are smart.
Can you
right?
imagine?
So we need to develop some humility,
Okay.
and then get to know more. There are so many resources that you can use. All right, share humility, collaborate with people, and so on.
Because that is also enough to kill the morale of that student.
It does.
And then
It does kill
will not
morale,
ask
yes.
questions
No,
the
you
next
won't.
time.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Adeleke
Thank you
Fakaya,
too.
Professor of English, LASU, for finding time to be here on the program today.
Thank you.
We thank you. All right, that's the much we'll take on the side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, it will be the turn of the Lagos ladies to take you through their conversation.